Annie, it sounds like you want to talk about what caused the universe. Can you tell us the summary of your question?
Actually, I wanted to, first of all, nice to speak with you again. What I wanted to talk about was a little bit of what you spoke about with the first caller. And what was said was that Christians can't close a gap between the first cause and their God, which is true that like ontological arguments don't do that. But atheists still need to concede that the universe was caused if the argument, the cosmological argument specifically, is sound, or disprove it. And atheists seem resistant to doing that for some reason.
So Annie, I just want to jump in and say that I do not claim that the universe was not caused. I don't really know any people who make that claim. I'm sure there's possibly some out there, but I do not claim that the universe was not caused. I just do not accept that there was a supernatural cause to the universe. And I don't necessarily know what this natural cause would be. I'm not a physicist, and there's a lot more that I need to learn about this, but that's not me saying that there is no cause. It's just, I would much more easily accept a natural cause as opposed to a supernatural cause. Does that make sense?
What you're saying makes sense. I understand your argument. Am I allowed to respond to that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, to ask for a natural cause of the universe, what does that mean? Because the universe is everything that is natural. So to ask for a natural cause to everything that is natural is to ask for the universe to bring itself into existence, or at least—
No, not necessarily. Not necessarily.
Okay.
I'm a little bit curious, turning the question around to you. What makes you say that the universe had to have been caused by a supernatural cause? How did you get there?
Well, I just explained. It's impossible since the universe is all that is natural, everything that we know and can ever know, then to suggest that something or a quality of the universe is the cause of the universe is just a logical impossibility. It's not a real idea. It makes sense in English as a sentence, but logically it doesn't make any sense.
Secular Spirit, it looked like you wanted to jump in a second ago.
Sure. Yeah. Hi, Annie. I'm also in Canada, by the way. I'm in Toronto. Thanks for calling and asking this question. It's a really good one. And what I always think about is when it comes to these big kinds of questions, I just adopt the approach of, well, I don't really know. There might be a lot of things that are beyond our knowledge currently. We might figure them out eventually. And you could be right. Maybe there isn't anything within our observable universe that created the universe, but we don't really know. We can't rule out there being something beyond our observable experience. There might be something that is natural, but we don't understand that it's natural. And where I get stuck is, so you said that it's impossible logically for the universe to create itself. I don't know what a supernatural cause could be, what domain it exists in, if we could even say that it exists in a domain. So it almost seems an abstract, meaningless thing that would also be impossible to say that there's something outside of nature. And I don't know how to bridge that gap.
Well, I guess it's just something you understand or you don't understand, because you can't bring something— for something to do anything, it has to already exist. So something can't bring it.
That's not the case. That's not the case, though. That's not the case though, because we know things emerge from combinations of other things. This is the case with a lot of even different elements, different minerals, many different natural things did not originally start out that way. They started from something that was not those things. And so I think that's a problematic argument to make, that something would have already had to exist. It's just like when we get arguments about consciousness, I don't believe that consciousness was something that already existed. It was an emergent property of having chemical and physical activity within a brain. And no, we can't necessarily explain the minutia of how all of that happens. We're working towards further understanding. But I don't accept that premise that something had to have already existed in order to make something different or make something else.
Well, the difference between the universe and objects or elements of the universe, let me start again. It is not accurate to compare the first cause of the universe to atoms of. I'm so sorry. Just give me a second.
No worries. Take your time, please.
Yeah. Thank you. I just don't. Yes, there are elements and chemicals that come from elements and chemicals, but those things are all part of the universe. We're talking about what created everything. Saying what was the cause of everything, not what was the cause of.
Yeah, and I think this is where we have a difference. The fact that you seem to need to have a concrete answer to this question, and I don't. I don't have an exact answer for what caused the beginning of the universe, and I'm willing to admit that. I don't understand how you get to this needs to be something supernatural, and that you have an answer for this question, when I'm not convinced that there's one answer to this question. There's so many unknown variables here. And it sounds like you want an answer and are more interested in having an answer than kind of looking more into it and wondering what we could be missing with trying to find an answer to this.
Well, I'm not sure about that. I don't think that's what my intentions are. To go back to what I was saying before, we understand that nothing comes from nothing. Everything comes from something. That is.
How did you get to that? How did you get to that claim? Especially if you're saying that we understand this, how did you come to that understanding?
How did I come to the understanding of what? Please ask like a specific question.
Yeah, the understanding that something has to come from something and that nothing could come from, like something can't come from nothing. How did you get to that understanding?
It's nothing. It's a foundational truth. Nothing.
How do you know that? How do you know that it's a foundational truth? Are you pulling a common sense argument? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying that it's like A is equal to A. There is no, A is equal to A. So something is equal to something and nothing is equal to nothing. So nothing comes from nothing. There is no, it's just.
That's not it. That's not, you're making two different arguments here. So something coming into existence is not the same thing as an argument of A equals A. Like you're using an identity argument and then trying to talk about things coming from other things. So something coming from something else is a process. And so that's different distinctly from an equation that is an identity. And so I think what's happening here, you're trying to like what you're essentially communicating to me right now is that you have this understanding that you believe is fundamental understanding to just how the universe works and how the world works. But the problem is we disagree on it. And so we can't go back and say that this is a fundamental thing that we all understand because we don't agree on it. So I need to know, why are we in disagreement? How did you get to this and we didn't? Because just saying this is just something that we all know that's not going to convince me that you're correct here.
Okay, so you said that nothing is an identity. What is that? That is nothing. So nothing is an identity. Nothing is equal to nothing. I don't how you get something from nothing when nothing is nothing. It does nothing. It's nothing.
So I don't know how much math background you have, but if we were to make an equation, yeah, it's very easy to say nothing equals nothing, because we've assigned terms to either side of the equation. But understand that when we add bigger equations, or when we're trying to make proofs that something can lead to something else, you have other variables there. And so when we manipulate those variables through addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, et cetera, adding other variables, adding powers of 2, powers of 3, et cetera, when we manipulate that, we are no longer in A equals A. We have a situation where A could equal X plus Y to the fourth, like oversimplifying that process to an identity equation is not proving necessarily what you're suggesting it does. And so I get that this is an analogy and not meant to be kind of taking one for one, like as an equivocal situation, but it's not as effective of an analogy because we're not dealing with single variable equations. We're dealing with a lot of variables, and things can transform as you do proofs, as you add more variables. And so we're missing the dynamics of this question. You have a very static analogy trying to be used to communicate a dynamic reality. And so I think that's where we're kind of missing this, but I need to know how you're getting to this point. Secular Spirit, do you want to weigh in at all?
No, I just want to give the space for Annie to just respond.
Yeah.
Well, how do you know there are a lot of variables? And can you tell me what those variables are?
I can't, and that's the thing. We know some variables. We don't know all of them. And I don't know if we can know all of them. And so that's why it's difficult for me to say we have an answer on what caused the universe, because there's so many more variables that we can even account for. And that's what you get into with astrophysics and with these experts who know a lot more than I do. They've been working their entire lives to account for these variables, and they find more variables. And it's the same thing with any subject matter. It's the same thing with human biology that I've been studying for a long time. There's always more variables that come up, and we do the best that we can with applying what we know currently, because some variables we don't really need to know to help somebody, get over their pneumonia. I know enough variables to address that. But with something so complex and so far removed as the origin of the universe, we don't have enough knowledge to really make any claim about it, other than we need to learn more. And I'm not convinced that there's a specific answer right now that we can point to.
Well, how is it useful to talk about anything if we must assume there are an infinite number of unknown variables to every question?
Well, and that's what we have to, that's kind of the nuance of it, is what's the utility of what we're arguing, and how are we using that information? And in this case, I would say, for the most part, arguing the origins of the universe really is not super useful. In general, it's not getting us a whole lot of places to have those discussions. However, it does matter when people are claiming that the origin of the universe is a supernatural being that influences your day-to-day life and tells you who you can marry, where you can live, how you live your life, and that does matter. So that's why we have these conversations, and that's why I take up these arguments, because people are using their answer to make other claims. But otherwise, if we didn't have that issue, I wouldn't need to debate this at all.
Okay, so in your view, it's not useful to debate the origins of the universe. It's only a problem that people have an opinion on the origins of the universe.
That is my perspective. There are other people who study the origins of the universe that might say that there are scientific applications to helping our planet with fuel sources, et cetera. They have probably some other reasons why they would argue this. This is purely my perspective. I personally do not think it's very useful in the things that I'm needing to discuss.
I don't know, that just sounds very, I don't understand then why you invite debate if you're not.
Oh no, we do invite, and that's what I just mentioned. We value this kind of debate because you are using this to justify the existence of a supernatural being who then makes decisions about my life. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people being hurt by this rhetoric. And that is the reason why we're arguing this. Secular Spirit, do you want to?
I got it.
Well, I just wanted to add this other point, the risk that comes with the claims from some believers that their God created the universe, or was the origin, the first cause of the universe, is if we feel like we already have the answer, well, it was God, then it could stop us from delving into, if you want to call it, the mysteries of the universe, learning more about the universe around us, its underpinnings, how it works. And it could actually stop us from searching, figuring out potentially the actual answer to this question, instead of the one that theists just give us without much evidence. So it does have that potential cost too. It's hard to quantify what it is, but it is a risk.
Okay. So
I guess the question for you.
Ben, can I actually ask her a question?
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
Annie, I just wanted to ask you a question. Is it important for you to know that there was a first cause, a God who created the universe, as opposed to just not accepting that maybe we don't know the answer? Is it important to you that you have an answer to that question?
it's not a matter of importance. It's the fact that the question exists and there is an answer. It doesn't matter if the question is important or not. The question can be asked. It's been asked for all of history. I've asked it and there is an answer. So you're saying there is no answer, or there's no point in searching for the answer.
No, not at all.
Right.
We just don't know.
We're just saying we don't know.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
I want the answer to that question too. And you're right. There has to be some answer that I just feel like we don't have access to it yet, and we might never have access to it.
Okay, but once again, if we leave the possibility that we may never have access to the answer, then the discussion, as Dr. Ben put it, is pointless.
Well, no, it's not like the possibility of never having an answer isn't a reason to just give up and not look for answers.
Agreed.
It's like we may never fully understand, like from medicine, we may not fully understand every single condition that can happen to the human body, but that doesn't mean that we should just quit now and let people die. Like that's not what we should be doing. And so I think this discussion, maybe we need to continue next time you call in, just because there's a lot of depth here, and I think we've covered some ground.
Just one more thing, please. Please, just one more thing.
Yeah, no, go for it.
Thank you so much. I think what I was trying to say when I asked my previous question, when I made my previous statement that the discussion is pointless, is that now I, as a theist, feel calling into this show is pointless, because whenever you meet an objection that you can't refute, you just say, well, maybe there are unknown variables. Like, what's the point of me calling in if you're just going to escape through the roof?
Well, see, that's my question. Like, how are you so confident that there is an answer and that the answer is your answer? How did you, like, I guess let me ask that. How confident, on a scale of 0% to 100%, how confident are you that your answer is correct?
I am confident there is an answer regardless of whether or not my answer is correct. And we can have a discussion to find the answer which requires us having faith that there is an answer. But if we always say there are unknown variables that we may never know the answer, then there can never be a discussion. There's no point in—
That's not true. That's not true, though. That's not true.
Well,
yeah, and I disagree with that for the reasons I already mentioned, that not having an ultimate end answer does not mean that the entire discussion is pointless. And I think it is problematic to jump to a conclusion that might not be correct. Like, if you're saying that whether or not your answer is correct, I think it's okay to think that there is an answer. And we agree with you that—
I'm willing to accept too, that there has to be an answer.
We will concede that there is an answer. We just don't agree that your answer is correct. And so that's where our disagreement is. And so we're trying to get at what made you confident that your answer is the correct one. That's what we're asking.
Okay, I'm answering. Because I assume that there are no unknown variables that I have to consider. So
how do you know that that assumption is correct?
That's where you and I differ. I am a theist, so I believe in God. That means I believe in truth. You're an atheist. You don't believe in God, therefore you don't believe in truth.
Oh, so if you don't believe in God, you don't believe in truth. So I want to know how you got to that point. How did you get to the point that God is truth?
It's because the creator of the universe would be the source of everything that we know. Therefore, it would be truth.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that would be the case if your assumption is correct. So you're automatically assuming that you're correct and then making your decision based on the assumption that you're correct.
Right.
Doesn't that sound to you a bit overly confident in your answer?
Well, I guess that's what
is there any margin of error for you at all?
Yes. I can be wrong about a whole bunch of things, but I know I can be wrong because I know that I can also be true. I can also be right. You don't know if you can be right or wrong.
No, but if you just assume that you're right, like if I say, let's say, going back to math, if 2 + 2 = 4, but I say, you know what, I'm just going to assume that 2 + 2 = 7. And if you don't believe that, then you're wrong. Would I be reasonable to, and then if I made every decision in math based on that assumption, does that mean that I'm correct just because I've asserted that?
Of course not, but we know that.
So I would have to justify how I got there. You can't justify how you got there just by saying, I know that this is true because it is, and that I know I can be wrong about other things because I know I can be true. But the thing that you have that is true is something that you just asserted was true. I'm not yet convinced that you've demonstrated that your truth is true.
You and I both know that 2 + 2 = 4. So that's why you're wrongly comparing my argument to 2 + 2 = 7. You haven't shown that my argument is like 2 + 2 = 7.
And you haven't shown that your God is true.
Ben, if I could make a point too. Annie, if I could just make this one point, the challenge, I see where you're coming from in terms of believing that, you believe in God and this God is the truth. The challenge for me is, how do I know your specific God is the truth and not some other theist's version of God, version of truth? Like, I grew up Muslim, and there's a lot of key ways where the Islam's God and Christianity's God are not compatible. There's direct contradictions with some parts of the beliefs that Muslims and Christians have. So who has access to the truth here?
So you don't need to believe my God is true. You just need to believe that God is truth. The creator of the universe, the source of everything that we can know, would be truth. My God has nothing to do with it. The creator of the universe would have to be truth itself.
I think, and with that, I think we need to move on. But for the next time that you call, I want us to pick up from how we got to the assumption that God is truth, because we're not convinced, and it's not something that we're going to assume is correct. You have to demonstrate to us why that point is correct. And so I think we'll move on for today, but please call in again with that argument and we'll go from there.